When people experience the I don't want to use the word bliss, but when they experience that feeling of having permission to daydream and to have ideas that are based on their own strengths and interests, that is the thing that makes them continue to do that again and to want that for others. And when parents see their children respond and light up because they've been given an environment that encourages their creativity, that they have been given permission by their teachers and those around them, they say, yes, let's try it. Why not? Instead of no, 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 they see their children wanting to learn more, to wanting to connect more, and they want to encourage that. And I've fortunate to have also been an educator on a number of different levels, and really had to work with some parents in understanding that it isn't a disservice to spend time on creative endeavors, and that it only serves the whole child and deepens the learning experience if you can facilitate quality connections between whatever the learning objective is and what the children are interested in. And that's the beauty of it there.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you tap into this podcast. My name is Jabir McKnight, and I am your host of Spark. We have an amazing guest here today, Paula Intravaia, the CEO and visionary for Cloud Club Collective. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jabir. What a delight to connect with you again.
Absolutely. So background, Paula and I had the opportunity to connect at South by Southwest about 2 years ago. Where does the time go? Whoa, let's start there. And I had the opportunity to really sit in your session, and I was inspired by the work that you were doing, which is so different than what we're taught to do in this day and age, which is, you plan things out, you're super focused, you're just churning away and grinding at your goals. And the work that you're doing, while it helps with that, it's different. It taps into a different side of the brain. And I'm just thinking about everything that's going on in the world today. And I figured I wanted to give you a call, and I wanted to connect with you on this platform to discuss why the work that you're doing is so vital in this day and age, and really the decades to come. So I would love to hear more about it for our audience, setting the stage for the work that you do.
Sure. So Cloud Club is focused on activating imaginations. And as you referenced before, the world's very noisy, continues to get louder and louder. The pressure to focus and be productive is leading to anxiety and a lack of creative confidence. And we realized that daydreaming is an innate thing that we do as human beings, but we are often told to either prevent it or to stop it, and that it's a waste of time. So we started exploring back in 2019, why are we daydreaming? There must be a good reason for it. And so that's taken us through a lot of research, a lot of different experiences, designing many different tools and techniques to help people to transition inward into a diffused state of mind, so a diffused thought, in order to return to focused thought, being not only restored, but revitalized and energized and inspired with valuable creative solutions that they can choose to act on.
I love that. So what was the spark that allowed this idea to come to life? Like, what was that moment before the name was put on it, the idea? Like, what was that moment? Can you share what that was?
Sure. Actually, I was participating in something called the Global Service Jam. So, as a design thinking and humanity-centered design practitioner, I attended an event. It was a intense weekend situation, and it took place in 100 cities around the world, all at the
Wow.
same time. And so Friday night, they announced the theme, and the theme was blue. Just one word, blue. And then we were tasked with brainstorming topics that could fall under that theme. And I wrote down daydreaming. And somehow it sifted up to being one of the top 8 topics that people could select to then do some discovery around needs or problems associated with it. And so that's what we spent our weekend doing, was researching daydreaming and what could be the needs that could serve human beings around that. And there we are. So we started focusing on daydreaming in school and with children. And we were fortunate to be able to go right away out into educational environments and test out our theories and learn a lot on what could be the benefits of intentionally stopping to daydream during a lesson with a group of students, very young. And then since then, we've done the same thing or similar things built upon that with students of all ages through university and including, in professional organizations.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I think the best thoughts come to me when I'm taking a walk or I'm just staring out into space or I intentionally rest, right? Purposeful
Absolutely.
rest. I'll get to it another time. Let me just be.
That's right. And when we say purposeful daydreaming, which is the technique that's our foundational technique, there's 2 parts to it. The first part is its purpose because you're choosing to create an environment to allow your mind time to daydream and wander. That's one part of it. Then you can expand upon that by priming the mind with some preparatory information so that it's productive in the content or the topic or area that you want to do some exploring in your daydreaming in order to then come up with a solution, idea, concept that's going to be valuable to whatever it is your focus area.
For our audience that may not understand what priming is, can you explain that process?
Yeah, so priming is when you have some intentional content that you are going to introduce as the start of the daydreaming session. So for example, with our work with Pauline Kelly, she was a professor at the University of Arizona, a Chemistry 101B course. So she would prime the mind first by introducing some concepts and sharing some different molecules and then some other images that might be seemingly random, like a pirate ship or a beach ball. And then she would pause, knowing that they were going to want to combine those sources that she'd prime their minds with into some new and novel solutions using molecular literacy, basically. And so that's the priming. So it's introducing some information that can then be mixed with your unique resource that you have in your mind and your personal experiences, and then you set the stage with some time for mind wandering and daydreaming and allow that illumination to occur.
I love that. It makes me think of the red car theory. Have you heard of that?
No, tell me that.
So it kind of speaks about priming. The red car theory would be if you tell yourself, hey, I'm thinking of a red car, and especially a model. Once you go outside, you'll start to see red cars. Not that the red cars weren't already there. You're just looking for them because that's how your mind works. We can't analyze our entire environment consciously. Some things are subconscious or falls to the background. So when you prime your mind to look for something, that's what it's going to hone in on.
Yes, that's a beautiful example. And I would also expand upon that and call that cultivating serendipity.
Mm.
So if you are, ready to have encounters that are going to provide you with sources, relationships, or inspiration for whatever it is you're interested in. If you're focused on that, just like you said, it's going to happen. You're going to have those seemingly serendipitous encounters that you gather together to move forward with your goal.
I love that. So I have a question. So I'm thinking about, like you said, starting with students and then really honing in on creativity. Um, I wonder, was there a marking point, I would say, over the past few decades where you feel like creativity stopped being a major focus, or was it never a major focus?
Well, I mean, it depends on the population you're in.
Mm.
So in education, most conventional education, creativity has never been the focus, other unless you're in the arts. And even from the beginning of the word creativity, there are so many misconceptions about what it is to be creative. And so right there is a problem. And then we undervalue creative thinkers until they discover things and until they do things that wow us, and then we're like, wow, that's a divergent thinker and we should all be divergent thinkers. Yet society has created this capacity more for conforming than for creating.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. One of the things that's also coming to my mind is like scheduling, right? We don't even have time as much anymore. So even if it's not a focus, I'm thinking of like when I was growing up, Nickelodeon had the Worldwide Day of Play, where it would shut down, TV, and you would go outside and play. There were outlets that were, even if it was outside of school, there was intentionality about getting young people outside, which if young people are going outside, the parents have to supervise them, right? So getting people outside into the world, into community to one, utilize their energy, see things that will allow their brain to open up in a creative way. But now more and more we find ourselves in silos and echo chambers. Silos and echo chambers where we're targeted with so many different, for lack of a better word, when I'm talking about advertising or it's like psychological warfare, you're being sold so many different things. You don't know why you think what you think if you can't take an intentional break.
Yeah, and play is a big part of that and it's not just for kids. And, we have a lot of very highly structured play nowadays, and it's not the same. And yeah, that freedom to explore and to be, and like you said, being outside, we know the research shows that being in nature or near nature has a magnifying effect on our well-being as well as our ability to be creative.
How do you guys leverage being in nature and the work that you're doing? I was reviewing one of your videos, and it's for teachers, the teacher's guide. And I'm just a very intentional person to how I view things. And that recording was outside. And I'm sure there was a reason for that. I would love to hear how that shows up in your work.
It shows up in a lot of ways. So at the very beginning of our work, when we first started exploring this space with children at school, we would pause a lesson and take them outside and have them look up at the clouds. That is why we're called Cloud Club. Well, one of our co-founders actually had a actual club in high school called Cloud Club, and they would just come outside and lay down and look up at the clouds. And so we built upon that. And so that was one way that we would do it. Another way is to evoke being in nature. So some of our audio guided daydream experiences take place, in your mind, but it's recalling the senses that you experience when you're in nature. We also do workshops outside. We just, last fall, as part of the World Design Capital San Diego Tijuana series of events here in this region, we conducted a workshop in collaboration with Convivio Society, which is in our Little Italy neighborhood in San Diego. And they have a nice little cottage called the Amici House, and Amici means friend. And we conducted our workshop there. So we were there, we were outside in nature during the workshop. We did a live audio-guided daydreaming performance, including musician and narrators. So we do value nature. We know you can't always be in it, but if you can imagine it, that's the next best thing.
I love that. So, would you consider yourself a creative person? And if so, how does that creativity show up currently?
Yes, I have always identified as a creative person. Currently, it shows up by trying to act upon as many of the ideas that I have as possible through the vehicle, which is Cloud Club Collective. So it's my mission to propel our mission as a way to expand creative consciousness and the creative capacity of individuals in order to facilitate human flourishing. And that can happen on a small level, it can happen on a large level. And I have a deeper understanding of creativity that I didn't have as a young person. For me, when I was younger, it was really the output. So what was I making? What was I writing? I was an art teacher, which is interesting that you said it. You remind me of my art teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm married to a musician, and we collaborate. So I have 4 adult children that are all individually creative in very diverse ways, and we also collaborate together. So just having more opportunities for creative collaborations is what excites me, especially when it's in service of others.
I love that. I love that. So, as a child, reaching back, you said when you were younger, was your creativity was focused on your output. When you were a child, were you encouraged to dream big, or was there more pressure to be practical? And how did you navigate that?
Fortunately, I was one of the younger children of 5, and so my siblings were much older than me. And my mom was a working single mom, so there wasn't a lot of traditional household things going on, but I was blessed to be nurtured and encouraged to do what I thought was interesting. So if I wanted to get my neighborhood friends together to put on a performance, my siblings would help us with costumes, and they would bake cupcakes that would match the theme of our performance. And I was given tools. I was allowed to do woodworking. In first grade, I made a stool for my teacher. I don't know how well it stood up. In my mind, it's just like 4 lumps of wood that I painted, that somehow were held together. So I was always encouraged to explore my imagination and to try, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
I love that. I love that. And so going from that, I'm glad that you talked about your familiar environment and how that cultivated your creativity. I think that's extremely important and sets the context for, like you said, the work that you were doing as an art teacher, and now the work that you're doing now, like where those passions align. For people that are in, whether that's young students or parents that maybe it doesn't come as natural to them to support the creativity of their kids, or for young kids or high schoolers or even college students that feel like creativity isn't as accessible to them, how would you encourage them to tap into their imagination based on where they are?
When people experience the I don't want to use the word bliss, but when they experience that feeling of having permission to daydream and to have ideas that are based on their own strengths and interests, that is the thing that makes them continue to do that again and to want that for others. And when parents see their children respond and light up because they've been given an environment that encourages their creativity, that they have been given permission by their teachers and those around them, they say, yes, let's try it. Why not? Instead of no, 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 they see their children wanting to learn more, to wanting to connect more, and they want to encourage that. And I've fortunate to have also been an educator on a number of different levels, and really had to work with some parents in understanding that it isn't a disservice to spend time on creative endeavors, and that it only serves the whole child and deepens the learning experience if you can facilitate quality connections between whatever the learning objective is and what the children are interested in. And that's the beauty of it there. And so part of the shift in Cloud Club has been toward adults, because they're the decision makers. And in wanting to serve the children, and we think of our tools and techniques as a prevention for children to lose their creative inner genius, and it's an intervention for the adults who have lost touch with that. And so we know that we need to have the parents and the adults on board so that they can be better at facilitating along with children.
I absolutely love that. So let's say in a unideal world where those two things are lost, I'm sure you have some statistics that you've looked into. What would the world look like with children or young people that have lost touch with their creativity and seasoned adults that don't care to regain it? What would that world look like?
I think it would look a lot like the world we're in now. There's the famous NASA study, and I'll be off on the exact numbers here, but it's the fact that they did a longitudinal study. 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds scored at the creative genius level, and they tracked these children as they grew, and the numbers just tanked the older they got. By the time they were in 3rd grade, I think it went down to 50% were testing at creative genius level, and then by the time they were adults, only 2%. So that's part of it. Like, there's research showing what I was just saying, that this is the world we live in now. And then just what you were talking about earlier with, the types of things that people are focused on, and the focus on more, and me, and surface level achievements, and lack of creative solutions. That we need a lot of creative solutions in order to move the needle back towards some more positive human experiences.
Yeah, more than ever. We're living in a very private equity VC world. No offense to the guys that are watching or in those spaces, but when your shift or your focus is on how do I make the most money or accumulate the most resources, and not necessarily create the best solutions for the problems that you see, it stifles creativity. I think that's some of the things that you were talking about, right? From if you're 5 years old, think about the type of work someone is doing in pre-K to 1st grade versus someone that's in 3rd grade. It's knowledge retention, that structure education that you were talking about a little bit earlier. So that's where you're spending the vast majority of time. And I'm assuming, when you're talking about as we get older, that grows, right? how we're packing up our schedules, the things that we're focused on. We're all capable of high levels of creativity. Uh, there's an author, Bell Hooks. I keep mentioning her in these podcasts, but the book is so good, All About Love. But one of the things that she said that I think is important across topics is giving words meaning. And you mentioned that earlier. What does it mean to be creative? What does that actually mean?
Right. So to be creative means to take whatever raw resources are available, whether it's a word or an object or an experience, and to shape it into something new and useful. So, you can reshape systems creatively so that they're more new and useful. You can reshape your relationships that way, and you can reshape, physical materials into something useful. So, I do believe that it's inherent in all of us to do these things. We just stop having that agency, that empowerment to shape change, and change is constant. And so when you feel that it's happening to you, then you aren't exercising your ability to creatively make a difference. So when you realize, well, things are going to change, they are changing, and here's where I can make a change, or I can shape change, then we can move it into a more positive area.
I love that. So, one of the thoughts and the questions that I have, and I'm thinking about under-resourced communities that are dealing with high stress. I would love to hear about, how this approach is impacting those communities currently, or plans to really engage in those communities. When I think about under-resourced communities, um, it's almost, I wouldn't say a double-edged sword, but it's two sides of the coin, right? If you are dealing with the most problems, then you have a unique visual into the most solutions. So you are typically some of the most creative, but if you're under resourced and you're highly stressed, you can also slip into despair. And I'm sure those numbers that you were talking about earlier from, again, first grade up until adulthood, I'm sure those numbers are dipping even faster in certain communities. I would love to hear your perspective there.
Sure. There's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which, is it Scott Barry Kaufman? He's a pretty fascinating psychologist who doesn't think of it as a pyramid, but more of a sail, and that there's also a consensus that it's not all about self-actualization, but collective actualization, but we do need to remove those foundational causes of stress. So, the safety, for one, is a big one, as well as food and shelter and the rest. So there is those needs that have to be addressed. Within the context of underserved communities, we do see many inspiring stories where the constraints have initiated very creative solutions. And I've seen an orchestra made of, junkyard parts and things like that. What we've been doing is helping those communities to activate and take control of their imagination, and not only in their own individual easing of the mind, which is the first part of the daydreaming experience, is that it eases your mind. Your anxiety is reduced, and then you can become empowered as a thinker that is divergent, that has creative concepts. So now you are overcoming creativity anxiety. You're not afraid to be creative on the spot. We had a really neat experience. We worked in collaboration with the UN Town Hall Foundation and World Design Capital, San Diego Tijuana organization, and UC San Diego Design Lab to conduct an intergenerational town hall where, based on the global goals, they're looking forward to in the next 50 years, what is going on with young people and people of all ages, and what's on your mind, and how do we achieve those preferential experiences moving forward. And so we were able to pause and to conduct an audio guided daydreaming session within the middle of this incredible workshop, where especially the voices of the youth and underserved communities that were attending from both sides of the border in Tijuana and San Diego. And the fact that people were willing to spend their time, their precious time, and come together and to take a moment to really allow the not only the pressures, but the opportunities to rise forward. And that was the start of building some relationships that are moving forward to make good things happen all there.
That's absolutely incredible. I mean, from the audio sessions to really the engagement that you just mentioned, I think that's incredible. And the intergenerational connections, I think, is extremely important. It's something that I preach. And I'm connecting with mentors and advisors. That sweet spot between, new age thinking, and, as Rick Rubin would say, like the power of naivete, but also having a understanding of how things have come to be. I think that's something that sometimes we miss. We understand how something is, but how did it come to be? If we don't understand how it came to be, then it can occur again.
Yes, that's a huge component of it, and we see it occurring again over and over again. And another component of that, of understanding how it came to be, is a way of developing empathy. So if you can imagine how something came to be, if you can imagine the experience of others, then you can understand what it's like to experience the world through their eyes and their shoes. And then you can have that empathy that's developed.
How has she, like, thinking about we are in a mental health epidemic, a mental health crisis, especially when it comes to anxiety and depression, that some studies say that is due to social media, or like a loneliness epidemic, because we're at home so much, right? And it's affecting our ability to connect with our broader community. How, based on your studies and your engagements, how is the lack of creativity affecting that, the ability to be empathetic? And how is that affecting our personal mental well-being?
Well, I think if we have a lack of creativity, then, as you said, we're less empathetic. And so then we're just looking out for ourselves, and it's just a vicious cycle of just looking out for myself, going inward, and doing what I have to do to protect myself and get by, without the concept of empowerment, that there's something I can do that can make it better. And not only can I make it better for me, I can make it better for others. And really, it should be the opposite. If I make it better for others, I'm going to be better as well. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. That's pretty powerful. So I want to shift gears and go back to Cloud Club Collective. Started in 2019. It is now 2025. So for our entrepreneurs that are listening, I would love to hear about your entrepreneurial journey. Thinking about the initial concept, and then, you're going directly into, in 2019, wow, we're in person. We're at this huge event, right? We're top 8, and then we win the whole thing. We're going to go out and conquer the world. Then the pandemic happens. Right? And then needs change, or maybe certain needs that you're preparing for, it actually was needed even more. but it shifted to virtual for a second. Like, tell me about like how has that journey been from 2019 to 2025? How has things shifted? And what are some challenges that you've faced along the way?
So there have been several challenges, and there continue to be, but ultimately, creativity is actualizing three intellectual virtues: curiosity, open-mindedness, and intellectual courage. And we've definitely started off being curious, and we continue to be curious. We're open-minded in the fact that we've had to pivot numerous times, and we don't see that as an issue. It's again, opportunities, and staying attuned to what's changing, where do we go, how do you stay ahead, what's coming forward. And then that intellectual courage to say, here's an idea, how about we all daydream on purpose? And let's try this and let's try that, with these different solutions that we have. And yes, we started off in person. We were in an incubator at the San Diego International Airport. And we were testing solutions that would enhance the passenger experience. And so that was a really fantastic experience for us. And actually some of those relationships have propelled us even today. But then very quickly after that, yes, the pandemic came. And so the ability to gather changed, and having in-person audio-guided daydreaming experiences was not going to be the thing to do at the time. And so we shifted to the audio-guided experiences. And so we started developing our audio guides, and then we ended up returning to the airport with a solution where we embedded our audio guides into interactive works of art through QR codes and other displays that were related to the theme. And
So cool.
we had it displayed for a year at one of the gates along, I think, a 28-foot wall, so that when people were waiting, they were able to relax and do some mind traveling at the time. So that's opened up a number of opportunities for us. We've also, through our workshops that we do, and as you mentioned, we met at one of the ones at South by Southwest. And another person we met at that same workshop is Roy Peterson, and he works in multimedia at the College of William and Mary. And we connected with him. He's a doodle artist. And so we developed a book of 101 daydream prompts. So another way for folks to access how to, get themselves into a creative state of mind by design. And so that was a really fun thing to do with him. And so we're able to now incorporate that into our workshops. And then we had been developing an app, which is what everybody was doing, right? And a way to, deliver our tools and techniques without us being present. And, AI was happening, and we pulled back from our traditional app route. We ended up developing a GPT wrapper through OpenAI called Yonder, which is still available, and I actually use it almost every day. But then we were able to take that and work with a fractional CTO to develop a web-based AI agent that is even more focused on our proprietary data and more fine-tuned as a thought partner, a creative companion that we embed in our workshops. So then when I was referencing earlier, where we were outside in nature in this cute little area in Little Italy, and we were doing audio-guided daydreaming experiences, well, then we also had individual access for our participants to have a conversation with Yonder about their ideas, to develop their ideas further before then coming back to a collective sharing. And so that's been really interesting to customize it for each situation or each topic or event or the organization's needs. And we've also performed our daydreams that we have on our YouTube channel as a live concert experience. And so that is something that we're now focusing as a shift of traditional or conventional workshop situation, which we're already pretty atypical in that regard, but we, moving toward, here's how we know humans respond, here's how we can relax into a topic, and we can guide the experience without it feeling like a workshop, that it's more of, I'm experiencing a symphony and I come in maybe thinking I'm going to be entertained, but really when I come out is I have learned, and we're all wanting to learn. So we see what we're doing as the incubation phase of the learning and the creative process. So the incubation, or the creative process and the learning process, they have 4 basic stages. There's preparation, then there's the incubation, then illumination, when you have that aha, and then validation. I put it into action, I test it out. And especially traditional education is pretty good at following that, except for skipping the incubation part. We prepare you, and now give me the 5-page or the 5-paragraph essay, or whatever it is that I want the output to be. So we're helping organizations to provide incubation time intentionally, so that their team members are equipped to realize the organization's vision. So you want people who are valued, and when you communicate that their thinking is valued and that their personal experience is valued, then you have folks that are who want to and are more equipped to deliver a higher performance.
So in an ideal world, we're talking about 10, 15 years down the line, what is the impact that you see this work doing, or the impact that you would like for it to do, and the places that you would like to be active in? I think I would love to share that with the audience.
So what I would like is for self-determined learning to just be part of life, and to understand the process, and to be self-aware of when you are at each stage or phase, and how to employ these tools and techniques in a way that works for you in order to serve the greater good. And so the spaces we'd like to be in are, communities. So, and a community can take many forms, but we are part of a community of creative thinkers, and we are here to magnify the efforts of others. So Cloud Club is a collective of creative professionals from a variety of domains, from personal chefs to scientists to teachers to artists to musicians. And it's all of us have unique abilities, and when we're able to use those together to imagine positive futures and then enact them, those are the spaces, those are the communities that we intend to be in.
I love that. I love that. We have to get you on the East Coast if you haven't already on this side, because I think it's absolutely necessary. The work that you're doing, that I'm aware of on the West Coast, is extremely amazing. And I think the communities in New York City and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. and Baltimore could really use this work. Before we end, is there anything that you want to share additional to the audience, whether that's students, professors, industry leaders, and entrepreneurs?
I just want to remind everybody that you daydream all the time, and that if you become aware of when it happens and you protect that time, you prime your mind with the positive outcomes that you wish to see, then you have the power to activate your imagination and to serve yourself and others.
I absolutely love that. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we do hope this conversation has sparked a new idea within you. Thank you.